Hey, hello.
Hi guys.
We're getting together to do this little video clip as part of Mother's Day week-ish area. I wanted to talk with Andrea. Andrea's had a very interesting motherhood type life and some experiences that I think would be beneficial for a lot of people to hear. And so, in celebration of Mother's Day time, anyways, figured it'd be a good time to ask her some questions and field this out a little bit and delve into Andrea a little bit more and what makes her tick. So I want to just, I guess, start off since I get to ask all the questions.
I know, I'm shy. I'm
Why don't
nervous.
you?
Let me make sure my hair's good.
Okay. Good. All right. You look good. If you get scared, just tap me on the leg twice and I'll stop.
Can't feel your leg. You're funny.
It's like our safety words too. Double tap on the leg. Anyways, so tell us a little bit about your childhood and your experience with your mom or anything you want to share growing up. We'll start with that and then see where that goes.
So my mom has a beautiful heart. She's like an incredible, she's Native American and she has like such a spiritual gift about her. She's had a lot of struggles. She had a lot of struggles growing up. And until I was about 5, I have really great memories with her. She was like room mom, and she would make our clothes and Halloween costumes.
Wait, what's a room mom? People don't know that these days.
I know.
What's a room mom? Is that just a mom that cleans your room up?
Yeah, no. It's someone at school, like a mom that volunteers in the classroom at school. So like when there's parties for holidays or whatever, they go in and help, that type of thing. Always like doing our hair, and I remember fondly watching her put her makeup on in the mirror, and like she was just beautiful. I always thought she was so beautiful. I was so proud of her. When I was about 5, like she and my dad always had a lot of struggles, and she kind of reverted to some habits that she had previous in her life. She started drinking, and it just quickly became very out of control, kind of a coping mechanism to get through some tough times. And everything just went downhill from there in the mom category. So by the time I was 10, my parents got divorced, which I was actually really happy about because things were very toxic in our household.
So like from the age of 5 to 10?
Yeah, from 5 to 10, it was pretty rough.
Started to change and they got crazy.
Yeah, and so after 10, when my parents divorced, my dad got full custody, and he was in the Air Force, and so he took the 4 of us kids. I'm the second oldest, and he took us, and we got stationed overseas in Japan. So
siblings. What do you have?
I have had 4 siblings at the time. I now have 3 step siblings as well, but 4 siblings. So it was my older sister, then me, and my younger sister, who's a couple years. So there's 18 months between my older sister and I, then 22 months between my younger sister and I, and then my younger brother's 5 years younger. So we were all pretty close, and my dad took on the immense responsibility of raising 4 kids on his own while being in the Air Force. And yeah, so we got stationed shortly thereafter in Japan. And so he ventured off into a foreign country with 4 kids, and I'm sure now that I'm an adult, like, I'm sure that was terrifying for him. I'm sure there were lots of prayers and pleadings to God for help on how to take care of that. But once we were in Japan, we did not see our mom, I think, for like 3 years maybe. Yeah, so that's, and then I've only seen her like a few times over the years, and then a few years back we had her come live with us for a little bit to try and help her out. But yeah, hasn't really been a huge part of my life from 10 years on.
So, that point when your dad moved everybody, like, was he just trying to take care of you guys all on your own? Did he have girlfriends or move into other relationships for somebody to care for you guys? Or like, well, like that'd be super hard to figure out what you're doing. And
Yeah, it was super hard, and I like how he got me tissues, because what, you think I'm gonna cry? Like, I cry about stuff.
That's for me.
Oh, here. So, like I said, I'm sure my dad and all of his siblings and anyone that cared about us at the time, including my mom, was probably offering lots of prayers, just help my dad take care of the 4 of us kids. So at the time we were ages 12, 11, 9, and 6 or something like that. And so, yeah, we had actually, God answered a lot of people's prayers, and we ended up getting put into some housing on the base that was directly behind this beautiful family called the Newbies. And we had 3 girls and a little boy, and they had 3 boys and a little girl, and we were all stacked very close in age, and we just became really close. And the mom of that family just took us under her wing and loved us like we were her own children. Like, she showed us what a mother's love should feel like. She invited us into her home, and when my dad got sent TDY for months on end, like, we would live with them, and they would just take care of us, and their family was amazing, and they were definitely a godsend for us as kids and for my dad, I know. But without them, I definitely don't think we would be like as well grounded, and like all of my siblings and I have had like really, really good spiritual grounding, and kind of I don't know, a lot of our views on what a family should look like, a healthy family should look like, came from the Newbie family.
I was trying to center us in there a little bit more.
Yeah. And so, yeah, they were a huge part of our life. So my dad had help there, and then sorry, trying to figure out this camera thing. It keeps sliding. Is that good?
Yeah, it's good.
That's good. Yeah. So.
So it sounds like Sister Newbie was like an incredible gift at that time to be able to have for your dad, to have somebody like family-wise, brother and sister like Newbie, the mom and dad. They were able to rely on some good people, and it sounds like they probably continued teaching you guys morals and values and keeping you guys on track and all that good stuff.
They were actually members of our church congregation over there. That's why Dan's referring to them as brother and sister Newbie. That's what we call the adults. That's what we call the adults in our church congregation. So just as a formality and kind of a respectful thing. So that's what I grew up, even to this day. That's who she is. Sister Newbie is. It's weird for me to call her by her first name, but yeah. So they definitely helped us be grounded in God and our faith, and just a loving family environment. They were amazing, and we've stayed in touch to this day, and they've just been a huge part. She'll always be my mama Newbie that I love and appreciate so much.
Yeah, she's a really neat lady. I've met her a couple of times.
I guess I should also go back before Mama Newbie was there to help. When my parents were going through a divorce, when we lived in South Carolina at the time, when it became just an obvious thing that things were getting too out of control and my dad needed to do something. He put the four of my siblings and I, so I was 10 or 9 at the time, the first time, he put us on a plane and shipped us back to Utah, where we lived with our grandparents for several months. Grandma was always like just the woman that I look up to. She took a time that could have and should have been very devastating in my childhood and something that was a very negative experience, and she made it so that I have very positive memories of that time. And she, again, just loved us and created memories and just was there for us. She passed away not too long ago. Some of you might have seen on here, but yeah, I love my grandma. So God has put like so many women there along the way that were not my mother, but were very positive, loving mother figures, which I know my actual mom was very thankful for too when she couldn't be there for us.
Yeah, I'm sure it's awesome. I was gonna see if you wanted to talk about how things changed much from like with your mom to why your dad got custody, or like moving you guys around, or was there from any of, I guess you kind of talked about it a little bit. I'm just trying to see this interviewing stuff. So
yeah, it's my mom has had a really difficult time, and like I say, she has not been there much as a mom for me, but at the same time, like I do feel for her. I have a lot of empathy towards her situations and the struggles that she deals with. So while I don't appreciate or have like fond memories of her as my mother, like I do appreciate her as a woman and the things that she's gone through and the struggles and like yeah, so I don't want to say anything that might potentially make her feel bad.
Yeah, that's fair enough and good enough. We should do that about me. Just kidding,
brother.
All right.
If there's anybody that I make feel good about himself on the internet, it would be you.
Whatever, you don't even know me on there.
This guy.
So, I guess life going on. You got married to the wrong people, whatever. We won't get into that. But you had some issues with fertility and motherhood, but you wanted to be a mom.
Yeah. So, yes, dear. Thank you. I don't know if you guys saw my Mother's Day post, but I had made a shout out to all the moms that have, birth moms or adoptive moms or people that have struggled with infertility, people that had absent moms, like all that kind of thing, just because I know that there are so many dynamics when you're talking about a relationship with a mom. So I just thought it would be fun to explore all of the different relationships that I've had with mother figures in my life. So yeah, the next thing that would come up in my life, Mother's Day was always hard for me growing up, of course, from the time I was at least 9 and on, because I didn't have a mom there to celebrate with, and so it was always kind of weird. And actually, as an adult, I started just calling my dad on Mother's Day and thanking him for being a mom and a dad.
Yeah, yesterday I got to say Happy Mother's Day to him and to Jody. So.
Yeah, my dad is incredible. So I always like to wish him a Happy Mother's Day because he filled both roles and made sure that we were never left to want or anything. He tried so hard and did so well. Obviously he has flaws of a human, but man, he did a good job with what he had. So, yeah. He's the one I like to tell Happy Mother's Day to the most. So, when I got married to my first husband, I wanted to have babies for several years.
Before me?
Yeah. I guess this is news to Dan.
No, it's not.
Stop.
Ouch. Ow. Oh, gosh, that's like a nipple ring there. But it's not. It's my suspenders. Just clarifying that.
All right. Couldn't get pregnant. Spent a lot of years taking lots of pregnancy tests and having my monthly cycle show up every month and being so devastated. For those that have experienced infertility, you know how devastating that is. When you're trying to get pregnant and you can't. And so we ended up doing in vitro fertilization, 1 cycle. My ex-in-laws actually paid for like a package deal where you could do 3 cycles or do as many cycles. Actually, I think you could do as many cycles as you wanted until you got a live birth. So it's like if you pass 3 cycles, then it would be way cheaper than just paying. So, but after the first round, I just could not do it. My body went through so much, and I was just like, it was, for those that have done it, it's like hundreds of needles and shots and hormone adjustments and like all kinds of crazy stuff, and I just couldn't do it and didn't want to do it anymore after that. So I swore that I would never do it again, which I actually told Dan when we were dating, that it was so hard that I just had such bad vibes with it. Man, it was hard. So I was like, I'm never doing that again. And then shortly after that, we started looking into the process of adoption and just have a beautiful story with that. We adopted our oldest son and just had an incredible experience with that. I'm not sure how deep I want to go into that, but it was just a beautiful experience, and it was very, I have a very strong testimony that he was meant to be with us and that I was meant to be his mama. And so many things happened along the way that just showed me that, and his birth mom was just beautiful and sacrificed a lot for his benefit, and I just have such a love for birth moms and all that they go through. And sorry, I'm trying not to, I don't want to like
say too much.
This social media stuff is really hard. It's like walking a fine line, especially as a mom when I'm talking about my kids, because I don't ever want to say anything that might be uncomfortable for them or something. So I'm just trying to tiptoe around it, as you can tell. But I do just want to say that I know that his birth mom was led to us, and we were led to her, and like the timing was just perfect, and his name was given to me. Like I just knew the second I found out about him what his name would be, and that he was going to be my baby boy, and I was just it was just a beautiful thing, and I'm so thankful for him. And so I was telling him the other day in the car, like, he was born in February, and then of course Mother's Day was just a few months later, so that I told him that was the first Mother's Day that I could recall in my entire life where I was just on cloud 9 and so happy. So happy that I finally had a good reason to celebrate Mother's Day, and that I finally had this little baby in my arms that I had desperately wanted for so many years. And I was so excited. There was one Mother's Day before he was born, actually, I remember, with my first husband, when he didn't get me a gift on Mother's Day, which I wasn't a mom, so like, I don't know. I don't know if it's typical to get your wife a gift even when they're not a mom, but like I wanted to be a mom so bad, so I guess like I just was so upset and offended that he didn't give me anything for Mother's Day.
Or for Father's
He's like,
Day.
you're not a mom, and I'm like, but I wish I was a mom. Anyways.
No,
Yeah. You're the one asking the question.
Oh. It's like something in my beard. Oh man.
No.
All right. So that explains how you got in there, and then
How you got in there?
into the motherhood department.
Gotcha.
And so that explains number one, and then how do we get to 6 still? We still got a few more stories to tell.
Yeah. So, my first husband and I ended up getting divorced, and I shortly thereafter met my second husband. Still not Dan. What do you call it? Spoiler alert. Still wasn't Dan.
That's not the word I was going to use.
Again, we wanted to have children together. When I married him, I actually did get a daughter, came along with him, which I was so happy about, and I will always love her. Like, she's just a beautiful girl, and I was so blessed to be able to help raise her for a few years. She now has babies of her own, and she's just a beautiful woman, and I'm so proud of her. And so I was able to be a mom to her, and then to my sweet oldest baby, Noah. And then a few years into my second marriage, we were going to a fertility doctor again, and I used Clomid, which is a fertility drug, just a pill that you take that kind of helps you ovulate better, I guess. And the first month I took that, I got pregnant. So shocked. My period was a couple weeks late, and I refused to take a pregnancy test because I have so much trauma. If you know, when you're struggling with infertility, you know how bad, like how traumatizing pregnancy tests can get, man. You sit there and stare at it, and you wait for those 2 lines to get there, and they never come, and it's just devastating, and you want it so bad, and then you know there's a whole nother month of trying to get there. And anyways, so it was kind of funny that I refused to take a test, and I can't remember if somebody told me, like, just take one, or if I told myself that or what, but I was on my lunch break from work, and I went to the store, and I was like, I'm just gonna take one. So I went to the Smith's, and I bought a pregnancy test, and I went in the bathroom and took it. Like, I refused even to let my husband be a part of it because it's just so devastating. I knew it was going to be negative. It always was. I had never had a positive pregnancy test that I had done at home. And I forgot to mention that when I did in vitro with my first husband, I got pregnant. And the HCG levels are supposed to be like, I think, near 100. At least in order to like feel like it's gonna stick. And mine was like, it's like you're pregnant, but your levels are like at a 6, so the chances that this baby's gonna make it are not good. And then like a week later, I started bleeding and had a miscarriage. So that was a positive pregnancy test, but it was a blood test through the fertility clinic. But to the date that I took my test with my second son, I never had like a positive home pregnancy test. So I was like, I'm not even gonna, I don't know what I was planning on doing, but I was just going to take it, and it was gonna be negative, and I was gonna throw it in the trash, and then my period, I would just wait for my period to come, and then I would never have to talk about it with my husband, or like have it like more solidified that it was negative again or whatever. We would just move on. So I went in the bathroom at Smith's, and I took the test, and it was positive. And I think I like screamed out loud. I was like, I, I think I was like, no way, like super loud. And then I was like really silly. And I took the test with my pee on it and everything. And I went back up to the lady that I had bought it from at like, I think it was at like the pharmacy counter or whatever. And I was like, what does this mean? I was 20. How old was I? 29. And I was like acting like a child. I was like, what does this mean? Like, does this mean it's positive? And I'm like, I have the box and I have the test that I had just taken in the bathroom. And she literally was like looking at me like I was a crazy person. But I was like, does this really mean it's positive? I just could not believe it. I couldn't believe it. She's like, yep, if there's 2 lines on it, that means it's positive. And I'm like, are you sure? Are you sure? But anyways, that was a very exciting day. And I loved every second of being pregnant. I had like an amazing pregnancy. I felt great the whole time. I had energy. Anytime I had any negative feelings of pregnancy, like fatigue or nausea or anything, like I like welcomed it so much, and I was so excited for labor. Like I was 29 and 30 by the time I had him, right? October, November, yeah. And I was just like so anxious to experience all these things. Like I always wondered like how strong I was compared to these other women, because I always have had like really bad cramps, and I've heard that like contractions are similar to cramps, and like I've had what I always felt like were like labor intensive cramping just during my regular cycle. So I always was so curious how that felt compared to contractions and just like all the things. And so I just was on cloud 9 the whole time I was pregnant. I enjoyed every second of it, literally. And I remember I was pregnant during Christmas, and I was listening to all these songs that come out at Christmas about Mary being pregnant with a baby boy, like Mary Did You Know and Breath of Heaven, and these songs. You can look them up if you haven't heard them. But I remember just sitting, holding my belly at Christmas time and just like sobbing and thinking about Mary being pregnant with baby Jesus, and I just felt like such a kinship with her. When I was pregnant with a baby boy at Christmas time, I would have been like 7 months pregnant, and so I was getting pretty big and could feel him moving around and stuff. And I just gained like such a love and respect for Mary, like feeling like I was carrying a baby boy during Christmas time, and what she would have been going through being pregnant, and the concerns she might have had, or just just feeling a kinship with her as a woman. But yeah, Uriah was born in February of 2012, and so exciting. Noah was so excited to have a brother, so they're 5 years apart, almost exactly. And Noah would ask me like every single day, starting like at 3 months along, like, when's the baby gonna be here? When's the baby gonna be here? When's the baby gonna be here? So finally I made a chain like you make for Christmas to like pull off a chain. Yeah, to pull one off every day until the baby got there. So he was 2 days early. Yeah, his due date was the 12th, so he was 2 days early. So Noah was really excited when he came. So yeah, I've just felt so blessed, and actually had a crazy experience with I was working full time, and I just wanted desperately to be a stay-at-home mom. My husband at the time didn't have a super good job that could provide for us, and so I just was like stressing about it my entire pregnancy on whether or not I should keep my job or keep my foot in the door there. I worked for the city and it was a really stable, good job, and I loved it.
Insurance and
It was-
everything.
Yeah, insurance, and it was close to home, and like just a good family job. Like they were super flexible with me being a mom, and I felt like I just wanted to keep my foot in the door, but at the same time, I just could not process going back to work when I had this baby that I had been desperately waiting for 5 years now, 10 years from the time I started trying to have babies, but 5 years from the time I was able to be a mom with my first son, who I got to stay home with for the first little bit until I got divorced. But anyways, I stressed about it my entire pregnancy, and then I was reading my scriptures. It was about, I think, like the weekend before I was supposed to go back to work if I was keeping my job after my maternity leave, and I still hadn't come to a decision on what to do. And I was reading my scriptures, and I had this very clear thought come through my head, like, let it go. Like I wasn't even thinking about it at the time. I was just reading in the scriptures. And just all of a sudden I had that thought come through my head, and I knew exactly what it was in reference to. I knew that was the answer to my prayers that I had been saying, wondering about keeping my job. And I said out loud, like, if I let my job go, you better take care of us. That's not very nice to like threaten God, but he knew my heart. He knew that I was just terrified of what that would mean for our family financially if I let my job go. And so I was like, please, like, keep your word and take care of us. If I obey this prompting that I'm having, like I need to know that we're going to be taken care of. And there was a time not too far after that when I was sitting outside with my little baby and sitting in the sun and playing with him and holding him and just enjoying being a stay-at-home mom. And I just remember feeling like the scripture that talks about how you won't have room enough to receive the blessings that come when you keep the commandments and follow what God wants you to do. And I just felt so blessed that I could stay at home with him and be there for my other son, who was then in kindergarten. And yeah, so my world was complete between Uriah, Noah, and my stepdaughter. I just was on cloud nine, able to have three kids, and experience motherhood. Yeah, there was a time when I most definitely thought that I might never experience motherhood, so I would have been happy with that.
Yeah. So then, as life and luck would have it, or just life had it, you ended up growing your childrenship more.
Yeah.
Met somebody.
Crazy turn of events.
Finally, like a good guy.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
I've told a little bit of my story here and there, but not a ton. It's kind of a hard story to tell because there are lots of judgments involved, and nobody knows what I went through. But when my second son was 17 months old, his dad was in a bullet bike accident. He was driving to work one morning. He was going about 100 miles an hour. He didn't have a helmet on. We never were sure how exactly the accident happened. There weren't any other vehicles involved, so we don't know if an animal jumped out in front of him or if there were other reasons it happened. But it was really, really bad. He flew off his bike, landed directly on his skull. His skull was cracked in like here and all the places. And so I got a phone call from the hospital, which I ignored because it was early in the morning. And then I got a phone call from his dad, who said, Jeff's been in an accident. That's all I know. We need to get to the hospital. he was in a hospital that was like 45 minutes away from my house, which I was really confused about. I was just all discombobulated, like why would he be at that hospital and not one closer to us? And so anyway, thankfully my dad, who's always there for me, he was in town visiting at the time, and thankfully he was there to drive me, because I was just beside myself. I called the hospital back on our way there, and I was like, what's happening? They're like, we can't tell you anything till we get here, till you get here for legal purposes or whatever. I was like, is he dead or alive? Like, how bad is it? They're like, we can't tell you. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. You can't even tell me if he's alive. Like, I was panicking. So I was very thankful that my dad was there to drive me. When we arrived, they took us back to, so I had my dad and then our 17-month-old son. Jeez, why are you doing this to me?
I don't know.
Gosh.
I'm thinking this is such a gifty idea.
I feel like my story needs to be told, so I'm happy to tell it. I know I do all the behind the scenes stuff, and I'm in some of our stuff, but I feel like my story has not been told. So, anyways, we got to the hospital. They took us back to a room, like one of those rooms where they stick the family when they have really bad news. And I knew that because I had been in one of those rooms before with my ex-sister-in-law who passed away. And my ex-sister-in-law passed away, but anyways, they still wouldn't tell us anything. Like I'm like, where's my husband? Like, I want to go see him. Where is he? Like, I don't know. At that point, we still had no idea what was going on. They seriously.
The only thing you could relate to was the room and the similarity to when your sister.
Well, and I knew it was bad. Otherwise, they would have been like, oh, it's just, if it wasn't bad, they could have said like, oh, he broke his leg or whatever, but he's fine. They would have said that.
Right.
Like, I knew it was bad. And I knew if he wasn't calling me, obviously it was bad. If he wasn't able to call me himself, right? Like,
yeah.
If he had just gotten in an accident and was at the hospital with a broken leg, he could have communicated that to me himself. You just know it's bad. And so, anyways, it seemed like we were in that room forever, but it was probably like 15 or 20 minutes, and his parents showed up, and then the doctor took us all back, and he was in our room, and we just all were standing out in the hallway outside of the door, but I could see him in there. At some point, I can't remember if it was before or after I talked to the doctor, I went in there, but he was not in good shape. He had blood coming out of his ears and his nose and his eyes. So I was holding my baby and standing out in the hallway, and the doctor said, he's probably not gonna make it. And if he does, he's probably gonna be a vegetable or whatever, like not in a good place. Now, at this point in our marriage, it was further out I get from that marriage, I realized how toxic and emotionally abusive it was. But at the time, I was very much in love with him. We had just had a baby together, and we were trying really hard to fix things that were very broken. We were in therapy and actively, I thought we were actively together trying to fix things. I found out later that not so much. It was mostly me trying to fix them. But anyways, so at the time it was, very devastating. And of course, when you're faced with somebody dying, like none of the problems that you're going through seem very big in that moment, because like the other option is death, and it's like, well, please just survive and we can figure out all the other stuff later. So anyways, he ended up being in a coma for, I used to say almost 3 months, but I think it was more like 2 months. It's all a blur. It feels like it was 6 months. I think it was like 6 weeks, 6 or 7 weeks before he.
You were there like every day, like
Yeah, it was a very hard time because I had a baby. I was actually still nursing, and every single day I found myself in a situation where it's like, who needs me more? Like I'm a mom to these beautiful kids, and I know they desperately need me. Thankfully, Noah had his dad that he could stay with and that he felt safe with. And I had neighbors, and my aunt, Callie, who was amazing, stepped in and helped with Uriah, and my brother and sister-in-law, and so many people stepped in to help. But I knew that he was struggling, and I knew that like his dad just disappeared one day and he didn't know where he was, and they were very close, very, very close. And there was one moment in particular where I just knew Uriah would, like, every time his dad would get home from work, he would just like jabber, like chat nonstop. And all of a sudden, like, Uriah just went mute. Like, he just would not, he couldn't talk yet. He couldn't say, I don't think he said any words at that point, but he just stopped, like the little toddler chatter that kids do when they're happy and content and feel safe. And I knew, like, I was always like, is that, like, does he know what's going on? Is he missing his dad? Like, what, I was trying to figure out where he was hurting or how I could help him or whatever. Every night before we went to bed, I would show him pictures of his dad, and we would say goodnight to him, and like I tried to keep his memory alive for him because he was so little. But he was very much affected by it, I could tell. And then it was just so obvious. This one day my dad showed up. We had a really loud diesel truck, and my dad showed up in our truck to pick me up from my brother's house, and I came down the stairs of his apartments with Uriah in my arms. And Uriah, for the first time since the accident, I think this was a couple weeks after or something, his face just lit up, and I knew in that moment that he thought his dad was in the truck. Man, I was like, now what do I do? I hope that seeing Grandpa would be enough, because he loves his grandpa too. But I opened the door, and the second that he saw that it was my dad there and not his dad, he lost it, and his little 17-month-old face just like sunk, and he was devastated. And I knew, like, all of my wondering if it was affecting him, like, was answered in that moment. Like, I knew that he was just really, really struggling, but he couldn't verbalize that. So yeah, I was always torn with whether I should be with my kids or with my husband in the hospital, because he was in a coma, so he couldn't speak up for himself or make sure they were caring for him properly. So I felt like I needed to be there to make sure he was okay.
Yeah,
to
advocate for him in a major way in
Yeah.
that situation.
For sure. Like, I just felt like if I'm not here, they're not gonna care for him as they would if they knew I was watching. And I wanted to be there every morning at 6 in the morning or whatever when they were doing rounds and giving an update on his situation, and like everything was in such a critical state, like things would change like so quickly that I just felt like I needed to be there to like know what was happening. And of course I had a very like deep interest in making sure that second by second things were being taken care of. But so I did spend a lot of time at the hospital. um, I usually went there after I dropped my son off to school, and then I would stay there until evening or till it was time to pick him up, if it was my day to pick him up, and then go home for the evening with the kids and try and put on a brave face. It was really hard. I would try everything. I tried singing. I tried like rubbing his feet. I tried like when somebody's in a coma, you're just like desperate to get any kind of signal that they're like still alive and there and know what's going on. And I even our son started saying daddy when his dad was in a coma. So I recorded it. I had him say it over and over and recorded it on my phone, and then I went and played it in his ear, hoping that it would wake him up, but it didn't. Didn't do anything, which was devastating. To have like, to be having your husband like hear his son calling him daddy for the first time and have just nothing. It's just like, just one of those things that just made it like very real what was happening. Anyways, at some point he started waking up a little bit and was very, very out of it. He had to have a trach, so he couldn't talk initially when he woke up. So we don't really know what he was thinking or feeling or how coherent he was, but he was in really bad shape. He ended up having to relearn everything. His brain was all scrambled. The way they explained it to me is like if you took like a filing cabinet and dumped it on the ground and mixed it all together, it's like everything was there, but it was all mixed up, and so they had to do a lot of therapy to try and put everything back in order for him.
I have to grab my medication real quick. My legs are going crazy. I'm like doing that.
So yeah, so we transferred facilities to the University of Utah, and he had inpatient rehab, and there he was just learning everything. He had been in bed not moving for so long that everything had atrophied, all of his muscles and everything. Like it's so crazy. He had like big, huge, strong hands, and they had seriously like shrunk to like the tiniest little weak hands, just laying in bed all the time. So he couldn't walk on his own. He couldn't like things started out very crazy. Like he couldn't sit up in bed on his own, so he had like two staff, like nurses aides, like sitting behind him holding him up, and then one would have like put a washcloth in his hand and like bring his hand up and like just get the motion of like what it feels like to like wipe your face off or like brush your teeth, or they were like doing it for him for a while until he could try and figure it out on his own, until things started connecting and clicking. And he didn't know who I was. He thought I was his ex-wife. He was always calling me her name, and he was alive still, but it was very apparent that he was not here anymore. Through the years, like little bits of him have come back, but he is not here anymore. His physical body is here, but he's not. For anyone that knows somebody with a traumatic brain injury that's severe, or even not so severe, like that you lose a lot of who you had before. It's also very similar to Alzheimer's. I worked as a CNA in an Alzheimer's unit at one point, and I felt, as I was going through this experience with my ex-husband, I felt like the time that I spent with people who had Alzheimer's had very much prepared me for what it would be like to care for somebody with a brain injury that severe, because it was very similar, just in not knowing who people are and not being in touch with reality, and feeling paranoid and feeling just all the things. All right?
Yep. Sorry. Legs are going on my phone.
So, yeah, anyway, it was a crazy process. Now he walks and talks, and he can do, like, he's held jobs over the years, like spinning pizza signs on the corner or folding towels at a shop, or
Working in the kitchen, kind of washing, spraying dishes.
yeah, doing things like that. So he nowadays he lives in an apartment with a few other people who are.
Sorry, one other thing. Just wanted to, like, you started talking about like how he didn't remember you. I don't know. I think it'd probably be a relevant point too. Like he didn't know, he didn't remember you guys' home. He didn't remember your son. He didn't remember like all of the events and like anything that you guys had been through. Like it was all just like just somebody strange. And
he had lots of memories that would come back, but they were all from pre us. So like he had lots of memories from his teenage years and from his first marriage and all these things, but it's like the part of his memory from like when he met me on was like gone. And it came back in little bits and pieces here and there. But he didn't remember like the birth of our son or our wedding day or our vacations we had taken or anything. And in fact, when he finally did come home, so he came home towards the end of October. The accident was in August, so when we finally brought him home, we walked in the house and he was like, "Why are you doing this to me? Why are you playing this joke on me? Like, this is not our house." And I'm like, "Yeah, this is our house." And so I took him inside and showed him his closet full of his clothes, and I just had these, I guess naive, having never gone through something like that, I had a very naive hope that like once he got out of the hospital and he was back in our environment and back in our home and back with our cars and back with his clothes and like in a familiar situation that wasn't a hospital setting, I was like sure, that it would like jog his memory, that it would wake his brain up, that it would click and that things would connect and that he would come back to us. And so it was very devastating that first day when we came home, and he was just convinced that I was playing some horrible trick on him by hanging up pictures of our family and moving all of his stuff to this place he had never been before. And yeah, it was really devastating for me, because I thought that when we walked in the house he was gonna like light up and be like, "I remember." Like,
right. Well, yeah, of course. All sorts of hope just for you, like just yeah.
Speaking of the clothes in his closet, man, that first night I went back to the house after the accident and went back to get some stuff to take back to the hospital. I like went to the closet, to his side of the closet, and I opened it and I was just sobbing. I like buried my head into his clothes, and my dad was just like, "You can't do this, Andrea. You need to," like, I can only imagine how hard that was for my dad to watch me go through. To watch his grandson and his son-in-law, like it was just, that's a lot to go through and feel so helpless as a parent too. It was hard for everybody. So when it became apparent that he was not going to go back to work ever again, to his regular job, they asked me to come pick up his stuff from work, his box of stuff. And so I went there. That was a really hard day too, because it was like just admitting that he's never going to be in a place where he can function like he did before. But I went through the stuff when I got it back to the house, and there were several things in there that made it apparent to me that even when I thought that we had been trying together to fix the things in our marriage that weren't working, that he was not, that he just was leading like another life outside of me, which was devastating to me. And I feel like I had such a strength and a fight about me to keep things together and to take care of him and to make sure he was okay and to just be there for him. And I feel like there's like something changed in me.
At that moment, you mean?
Yeah. This is hard to talk about because I don't want to shed negative light on him, and I also don't want to put information out there that will hurt my son. But just know that like the stuff that I found was devastating, and in that moment, like my human ability to like fight and to just unconditionally sacrifice myself for this situation just became really hard. I was like, what I thought was like, if he wasn't fighting for me, even when he was completely with it here, like how can I go on fighting for him? Like it, and sacrificing the rest of my entire life for this situation. So, and even at that, I still was very much taking care of him, and it was very much a caregiver situation where I had to help him in the bathroom and tell him literally every single move to make, like get out of bed, make sure you use the bathroom, now shower, now you need to eat, make sure you hold your fork like this, like it. And then he was having bathroom accidents, and every single night and day bathroom accidents, and like it was just
not just laying in bed accident, but like confused, like
yeah. And I have MS as well, so like it was just all very difficult. But yeah, getting his stuff back from work and realizing that even when he was here and fully functioning, that he was not giving his all to me, it made it very hard mentally to stay in it, to win it in that situation. It just did. Like, and then I also knew that physically and emotionally after that point, like if I stayed in that situation, I just knew that my kids would lose me too. Like I was
absolutely,
yeah, I knew that I was going to become like just a really shell of the woman that I was. I was only 32 at the time.
You guys had been married for 4 years?
Yeah, we had only been married for 3.5 years at the time of the accident. And there were a lot of very toxic, horrible things that happened during those 3 years. So anyway, all of it in a package, whatever. It's really hard. People judge me a lot on here without knowing the full story, and I can't tell the full story. So, but it's my truth, and I was very, very, very prayerful, and knew that what I needed to do for myself and for my kids, and I also knew that he would be okay. I was assured of that. Like, he's going to be okay with or without you, but your kids are not going to be okay, and you are not going to be okay if you stay. And when I tell you that was the hardest decision I've ever made, and nobody should ever have to make that decision, but it was very hard. I spent a lot of time in therapy trying to figure that one out, and I knew people would judge me, but I knew what I needed to do, and what mattered to me was the well-being of my kids, first and foremost. And God let me know that the best thing for them would be to to separate from that situation and still love him and still care for him and still see him, but to not be in that 24/7 situation. So
Yeah, I mean, you're talking like a full-grown big
yeah, he's a big
man,
guy.
baby too, like with your fatigued MS body and trying to keep up with the kids and stuff already and exhaustion, sorry to like feed into it, but just like trying to paint a picture that I think of when I'm thinking of it, that I'm sure others are too, and it's just there's it's a lot to
There's a lot.
digest.
And everybody's situation is so different. Every brain injury is so different. Every accident is so different. Every relationship is so different. Every person is so different with their strengths and their weaknesses. And really, like, God is the only one that knows you, and he knows everything, past, present, future, like he knows. And so that's where I've chosen always to put my trust in through all the things. And so whatever people have to think about that, I know in my heart of hearts what I needed to do. And the more time goes on, the more it's very apparent why I needed to leave. Like he is in the same situation that he would be. You know, he's kind of in a standstill of time. Like he doesn't understand how much time has passed. Today he's like a 7-year-old, I say, like mental capacity, and he doesn't realize how long it's been since his accident, or how
When he talks about it.
yeah, like he just doesn't comprehend like reality and real time and different things. So it's kind of like he's in just like a time capsule, just kind of chilling and doing his thing, and he's good.
Yeah, every time we like revisit, like he'll start trying to tell a story about, oh my gosh, do you know what happened to me? And like just like if you were just a stranger on the street and having that conversation with him for the first time, you'd be like, well, man, like you would think that he's like, I don't know.
And he loves Dan. When we visit him, he always gives Dan a hug and tells him, thank you for taking care of my family. It needed to happen. And had I not followed the Spirit and gotten away from that situation, and I wouldn't have my 2 beautiful girls, my babies. I wouldn't have my 2 beautiful older girls from Dan, and life would just look very much different. We wouldn't have the wheelchair Dad, like we wouldn't have all of the blessings that have come from that, and to be able to be God's hands in helping so many of you guys get through some hard things. Like it's just, there's so many things. So it was a very hard thing to go through. It's very hard for my ex-husband still, I'm sure, on a lot of levels. But it didn't need to happen. And man,
The other part too, like towards the end, and just add, I think it's an important piece, like his family, his parents mainly, were like becoming more and more aware of like how trying and what kind of effort was being required to help care for him. I don't know if it was from them like coming to visit or to take him out for a day or anything, but like I remember you saying that his mom had approached and said, hey, you know, like if you ever are done or ever like need out, like we understand and we'll help you, and we'll like send him home, like type of a thing. Like I don't know, I wasn't there for it, didn't hear it, and just like in a roundabout way, it seems like that was kind of the image that was portrayed, and then like that begun to happen and it didn't work out very long. And I don't know if you want to like address that too. So it's not you had others that could see, that cared for you and cared for him,
Yeah.
that knew that you were.
It's very hard for anybody that knew him before his accident to spend time with him. It's just hard because he's not there, and it is a very difficult process to grieve the loss of somebody when they're still physically here. Because we did lose him.
It's a trip.
We lost him that day, and like his daughter has a really hard time with it. It's just hard to be with him. So yeah, his mom could see that. She could see that I was struggling, and yeah, she offered that if I needed a break, she could help out, and I was like, okay. I don't think she expected me to take her up on it so quickly, but it was hard. And to that day, like when we were struggling in our marriage and things were so toxic, I didn't really let people in on that, because I never think it's okay to like badmouth your spouse to other people, because then like you make up and then the other people aren't there when you make up, and so then it leaves a sour taste in their mouth for them. So I never had talked to people about what was happening in our marriage, which made it even harder when I made the decision that I did, because nobody knew the reality of what was happening.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, it was just a difficult situation all the way around. If you have specific questions about it, feel free to put some comments, and if I feel like I can, I can address them. It's hard to know like what details I should tell or haven't told.
And I hope people are like really take a moment before you say or throw things in there, and like Andrea is very loving and very down to earth, very forgiving, very much into, like in our marriage, I know it would have been the same way. Just she's very much team family, and I know from watching and hearing and like knowing more about everything, just how hard everything was for you. Like at no point was anything ever easy. You didn't just be like, oh, screw this, I'm 30 whatever years old and beautiful and I deserve to be free. Like it wasn't anything like that. There's never been anything other than the fact that you were going downhill, and like it was such a just an outside view looking in at everything, just like draining the life physically out of what your body was actually capable of able to do, and so on. But even with that, I think I could have done it. Like I could have gotten help, or I could have. The main thing is the emotional turmoil it took on me when I realized that like things were so toxic, even when I thought they were getting better. Yeah, very toxic. That's great. So like, yeah, I think I could have and would have and wanted to and whatever stayed and taken care of him for the rest of our lives and done that. Like that's the type of person I feel like I am. Like I can be a caregiver. I can love someone unconditionally, whatever. It was very hard to stay in it mentally after that happened. But anyway, ultimately, the hardest decision to make, one that I did not take lightly and could not have made without the help of my Heavenly Father that led me through it and gave me the strength to do what he knew I needed to do, and I did. So, the next journey to motherhood. What? If you're gonna take answers that long in between my questions. No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, and then from there, that kind of went off on a tangent that had nothing to do with motherhood. Well, actually, it had everything to do with motherhood, because it was really hard being a mom during that whole thing. Being away from my kids, and like I said earlier, like I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom so bad. And then I found myself in a situation where I was having to drop my
kid off with a babysitter every day, my 17-month-old, and it was so hard for me, and it was so hard for him. He would cry and scream, and did not make it easy for me to leave on any level. Every single day when I would leave, he would just
Rip his little heart out.
yeah, because not only was his dad gone, but now his mom's being ripped away too, and it was just like he
had to not had
did
any
not
idea
do well.
where mom was going and if she was coming back, and
Yeah, it was so hard at the age he was to not just be able to explain to him any of what was going on. I mean, it was hard enough as an adult to try to like wrap your brain around it, like let alone a 17-month-old baby. So it was a very difficult part of my motherhood story, for sure.
Jeez. You met somebody, or let's move on to the next phase of motherhood and how you grew your family or your mother more.
So Dan and I met and became friends, and